We're being recorded. It's letting us know we're being recorded, and we're actually live on Facebook right now. So we're getting all kinds of tech notifications here. So hi, Mary. Hi, Melissa. How are you?
Hi, Julie.
Hi, Julie.
I'm going to give Facebook a minute or two to just notify everybody that we're live. So I'll fill a little bit of airtime so that we don't miss any of the conversation that's happening. But as we just heard, it is being recorded, and I'll let people know too. But if people are watching right now and they need to step away for any reason, you can come back to Facebook at some other point or check out our YouTube page, and it will be there as well. A couple quick things about Warwick's. Not sure where everybody is joining us from this evening. I'm hoping that there's lots of people from San Diego, but Mary and Melissa, I think you two are both in the New York area. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we might be having people from across the country, mid-country, wherever. Just so you know, Warwick's is located in La Jolla, San Diego, California. At some point, Mary and Melissa, we need to get you, I think we're at opposite ends of the country right now. So we'll get you down to our corner of the country sometime in person, which would be wonderful.
Love that, Julie.
We are looking forward to starting some events in the store. We're probably going to start some in-person events starting in September, but we will keep doing these virtual events because it's so wonderful being able to bring authors together, like you, both of you together, to our audience, which I think is something that's harder to do in person. To try to get your schedules to come to San Diego is a little bit tougher. So I love doing these virtual events. For tonight, so just so you, so Warwick's, San Diego, La Jolla, we are open for business, but I always like to say too, any way that there is to get a book, you can get it from Warwick's. So tonight I will be putting into the comment section of Facebook how to order Mary's book. Simple link, click that. You can choose to, if you are in the San Diego area, you can choose to pick it up at the store, or we can ship it to you. I'm hearing good things about our shipping, that it gets, even though we do media mail, it gets there pretty quickly. So an economical way to ship. So that's happening too. Mary and Melissa are going to talk today for about 30-35 minutes about the paperback release of, when did the paperback release of All the Way to the Tigers? Just recently, right?
May 11th.
May 11th, yeah. So just recently released in paperback. So they're going to chat about that book and travel and all kinds of great things tonight. But if you do have a question, if you're watching on Facebook and we are live, that's where I'm going to monitor the questions. If you're watching us on YouTube, sorry, we're not live on YouTube anymore if you're watching this. But you can put some questions into that comment section, and they're going to chat for about 30 minutes, and I'll bring those questions into them after they're done chatting. So I think Facebook's had enough time to notify people that we're live in here. So I'm going to do my due diligence and introduce you two ladies, and then I'll toss it off to you. So Mary Morris is the author of numerous works of fiction, including novels, Gateway to the Moon, The Jazz Palace, and House Alert, and nonfiction, including the travel classic, Nothing to Declare, Memoirs of a Woman Traveling Alone. Mary is a recipient of the Rome Prize in Literature and the 2016 Ansfield Wolf Book Award for Fiction. She lives in Brooklyn, New York. She is here to, but I think she's, did you say you're in the Catskills right now?
I'm in a cabin in the Catskills, yeah.
Yeah, love that.
I've been here for 14 months, I don't know.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned earlier, she's here today. We're going to talk about the paperback release of All the Way to the Tigers. And joining Mary today is Melissa Biggs Bradley. Melissa learned the power of travel at an early age. She spent a month in Australia when she was 10, went on her first safari in Africa at the age of 12, and lived in France with a French family for a year of high school. For 12 years, she served as the travel editor at Town & Country and launched Town & Country Travel Magazine, which under her editorship was nominated for a National Magazine Award for General Excellence by the American Society of Magazine Editors. She founded, I'm going to mess up how you say this, Indiger? Is it Indiger?
You can, it's a dead Latin word, so you can say it however you like. We tend to use the more Italian pronunciation, which is Indigari.
I'm going with that.
But there's no wrong way.
Okay, I love you for that, because I can mess up the simplest English word. So Indigari in 2007, because she believed that creating a platform for exchange between like-minded, passionate travelers would allow for more transformative journeys and meaningful global connections. Since Indigari's founding, Melissa has been recognized as a pioneer entrepreneur in the luxury travel space, and Indigari has been named to Inc.'s fastest growing companies in the US and to Crane's 50 fastest growing companies in New York. She received her BA from Yale College and her master's degree from Columbia University. Ladies, have a great conversation. We'll see you in about a half hour.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Julie. And I should say, Julie asked me earlier how Mary and I met. And Mary and I have met actually over Zoom, because I first met her when I read Nothing to Declare in my 20s. And I felt like, Mary, I had found the travel companion that I was most looking for in life, because your perspective on what travel can do for people and how it can make all of us kind of dream bigger and live larger was just, it just so spoke to me. It's always been one of my favorite books, and I've read lots of your books since then. So when COVID hit last year and we couldn't travel, and I decided that we would start doing virtual conversations over Zoom, and that eventually turned into a podcast, you were, of course, one of the first people on my list that I wanted to talk to. So it's been great getting to know you through those mediums. But I would love to start tonight by talking about how you ended up writing All the Way to the Tigers and what it was that set you on this particular journey.
Okay, I'm going to talk about that. But first of all, I just want to say thank you. And I've really loved our conversations and our Zoom and the podcasts we did. And it's just so great to meet such a like-minded person. And I think if we ever have the opportunity to take a journey together, we'll have a really good time. So
I'm sure
I think, yes, I think we both know that many journeys begin with a detour, or there are detours in every journey, you know. And this, All the Way to the Tigers, is a giant story of a big detour, right? So I had a sabbatical in 2008, and I had booked travel all over the world, including Morocco, lots of time in Morocco, where I know you just got back from. My husband was running in the Rome Marathon. I had lots of solo trips. You know, I had everything. I was going to be a nomad. I was kind of looking for my next idea, and I was fishing around, and I thought, you know what? I'm on a sabbatical. I'm free. I don't have a kid at home. I'm going. And the first morning of my sabbatical, literally, I turned to Larry. It was a beautiful day. And I said, let's go ice skating. I really want to go ice skating. And an hour later, I was in the ER. I was off my feet for the next 3 months. I had 2 surgeries. The doctor didn't know if I would walk again. And basically, instead of traveling around the world, I had a 3-month pity party where I just really, really felt totally hobbled. I mean, in every sense of the word. And so instead of going on sabbatical, I went on disability. You know, instead of going on exciting journeys, I was canceling reservations. I have to say, it was only Air France that wouldn't accept my cancellation. Everyone else in the world did, but you know, maybe they'll come around. But anyway, so it was a really dark time, and it was Easter Sunday. I was all alone. My daughter was living in Ireland. My husband was at work that day, and I was reading Death in Venice. And I was reading it because I teach a class called The Writer and the Wanderer, and it's stories that happen during journeys, but Death in Venice was definitely not helping my mood any. But I got to a sentence lying there on my couch that said he would go on a journey not far, not all the way to the Tigers. And when I say that line now, it's still like a bolt of lightning goes through me, because I couldn't read past that sentence. It was like, you know, despair turned into possibility at that moment for me. And I knew that I took that line and I put it in my brain, and I knew that I would go all the way to the Tigers. And I didn't know if I meant literally to go look for tigers or if it was going to be a metaphor for my life going forward, but it kind of became both. So, yeah.
But tigers meant something to you even before that metaphor, right? So what was it about tigers that was so alluring to you?
So as a child, we would go to the circus every year, my family. And my father could not stand to be in crowds. So we had to leave before the last act. And the last act was always the big cats. And I remember every year being dragged out of the circus as the tigers were coming into the cage. Now, of course, I completely am not, I'm not in favor of that kind of treatment of animals now, but as a 4-year-old child, it was a very exciting thing, and I never got to see it. And at a certain point, I started to have a recurring nightmare about a tiger. It wasn't really a nightmare, it was a dream. And there was a tiger at the foot of my bed, and it was there, and it was sharpening its claws. and it would pounce, and then I'd wake up. But I was never afraid of it. And I always remembered that dream. I mean, I had it many times, and I always remembered that there was something about the tiger. I knew it didn't mean to kill me. Now, that's not really true if you meet a tiger in the wild. I don't recommend trying to be friends with a tiger, but there was something in the dream, and it just became a kind of totemic animal for me. And then after reading that sentence, it was like all that came rushing back, my dad and childhood and what tiger and the tiger dream. And the more I started to learn about tigers and read about them, I realized how deeply I identified with them, which I can talk about a little bit more. But, both as an animal, as a beautiful beast, but also in a metaphorical way too. So,
Yeah, actually, will you talk a little bit about what it is that you identify with tigers? Because I'd be curious. That's not an obvious alignment.
right. So the identification happened over time and over this period where once I decided that day on my couch that something in my life was going to be about tigers, and I began this journey of reading and learning about conservation. And there were just a lot of things that I learned about tigers. So, for example, they are solitary apex predators. There's no herd, swarm, flock of tigers. There's no word for tigers together because tigers are never together unless in some kind of a zoo. One of the things I learned on my journey was that all unseen tigers, so if there's movement in the brush, your guide will say, "Oh, she's out there." So at one point I asked my guide, why do you say she? How do you know it's a female? He said, "I don't. All unseen tigers are female." And I'm like, okay, solitary apex predator, always female, mysterious, elusive, unseen. They're artists, they're writers, they're creative people, creative creatures. And so more and more, I began to identify them. And also, a tiger, a male tiger needs 100 square kilometers of territory, a single tiger. They are the last wild things in that sense. And so to keep them, I think for our own wildness and our own sense of what it means to be free, I also came to identify with them in that way because of what it means in terms of the environment and the planet and just a sense of freedom.
Yeah, and fragility. I mean, it's the combination of the two, right?
Right.
And there was a point in the book, Mary, where you talked about how your guide, who is a really important character in the book, says you don't look for tigers, you look for the signs of tigers. Right. And I love that, but I'd love to know, what does this kind of mean to you in terms of your own life's journey?
Right. So can I just give a little context for my guide? So when I went to India, it was January and it was freezing cold, and you go to the game reserve with a driver, and then a guide jumps in your Jeep, and it's completely random. And this guy jumps in our Jeep at 6 a.m. I was the only tourist in central India as far as I could tell. So anyway, he jumps in our Jeep. I had the Jeep to myself, which is what I was trying to say. He gets in and my driver turns to me and says, "We got the best guide in all of India." And I was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing. I'm going to learn things. He's going to talk to me. He's going to teach me." And he didn't say a word to me like for days. He just told me to be quiet. He kept telling me to be quiet. And I didn't know if it was a language thing or what. Anyway, I could talk about Ajay a lot, but to answer your question, at one point, he did start to talk to me. And one of the things he explained is that he was listening, because you do not look for a tiger. You cannot just go out and look for a tiger. You won't find a tiger. You have to look for the signs of a tiger. So you listen to the sounds other animals are making. You listen to, the sounds of the brush and what's happening out there. You look for pug marks and things like that, but mainly you're listening to the other sounds. And I think what it meant to me as a traveler is that sometimes the best way to get somewhere isn't straight ahead. Sometimes the best way to get to something is to follow the signs, but not the itinerary. Not exactly where you think you have to go, but maybe there's a different path that's going to get you there, and to trust it. Sometimes you need the itinerary, but trust it if it's not, if it's going to take you around a little bit.
Well, I mean,
That makes sense. Okay.
so many of your books in many ways, it is the journey. I mean, it's that phrase, it's the journey that's the destination, not the destination, right?
Right.
And it seems like you found that. I think we probably both found that to be the case many times, that what you thought you were looking for was just a goal to get someplace. And it, as you said, it was the detours.
Right. Or, you think you have something, you think you have something planned, whatever it might be. And all of a sudden something else happens, and, your luggage gets lost, or you miss a connection and you wind up in an unknown city, or, there's a million things. I spoke to you about this. I was writing a book on the Mississippi River, and I was supposed to go down the Mississippi. And I found these two river rats named Tom and Jerry in La Crosse, Wisconsin, who had a kind of unfinished houseboat, and they were going down the Mississippi to a certain point in the river. And I said, well, can you guys get me to Cairo, Illinois? And they said, yeah. And I've lost my thread about, oh, right. And 2 weeks before I was supposed to go, Katrina happened. And the journey all the way down the Mississippi was no longer viable because the port of New Orleans was closed. And when Tom and Jerry got me to Cairo, Illinois, and they were going to go up the Ohio, they were going to go a different way, I just said, hey guys, you know what? I'm sticking with your boat. I'm staying with you. And I changed the book, it changed the direction, but they became the story. So, there was just a moment where I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go with them. And sometimes that's what you do. I mean, obviously it's hard to do that if you've got, if you're in a group and you've got a very set itinerary, but, there's always wiggle room. There's always room for, that off the beaten track, that, we keep saying the word detour, but detours are very important.
Yeah. And I actually love to hear, I know you love India. I love India. It's such a fascinating place to travel, but you went by yourself, and I'd be curious what you think about India for the solo traveler. What makes it a good choice for a solo traveler, or a bad one?
It's probably not a good one. I'll tell you, I think it's a good choice for an experienced solo traveler, or someone who's not afraid to go with the flow. Because in India, you have to go with the flow. Unless you're traveling at a very, very, very high end and everything is really planned out for you. And even then, things can go, I'm sure things don't always go entirely as planned. But to me, what makes India a wonderful place for the solo traveler is the vibrancy. I mean, obviously, it's a very tragic, difficult time in India right now, and we all have to think about what is happening there. Hopefully, they'll get to a better place soon. But the kindness of the people, the food, the vibrancy, but it's a place where the difficult things are right in front of you all the time. I saw things I've never seen anywhere else in the world that very painful and also very astonishing. I think that Varanasi is one of the most incredible places I've ever been in my life. And there was a moment in Varanasi where I was at one of the at the pyre. I was in front of a pyre, and a boy was saying goodbye to his father, and I did not want to. I didn't feel right being there, and I tried to turn to go away, and there was the stairs, and there was a family that had their dead relative propped up on the stairs, and they were doing selfies with this dead relative. So I couldn't go that way. So I turned to the right, and there was a water buffalo right next to me. And I was like, okay, where am I going to be wedged between a dead body and a water buffalo? Like, it was something I'm, never probably going to forget. So, I mean, there's a rawness to that kind of thing, but I mean, I will go solo pretty much anywhere in the world, though. I think there are many ways of doing it, and you can do it safely, and you just have to be smart about it.
Yeah, I mean, and you and I have talked about this. I completely agree with you, and I think in some ways, there's such a value in being on your own when you're traveling, because you pay attention in a way that you can't when you're with other people, even if it's just one companion. But you started traveling on your own pretty early and have been to some pretty tough places for the solo traveler. So what gave you sort of the courage or the permission in the beginning to start setting out on your own?
Well, it's a funny, see, a lot of the times that I've wound up in kind of strange situations is when I've sort of made a mistake. And I think it really began in San Miguel in Mexico in the 70s, the late 70s, where I'd gone to this town. I had a grant from the National Endowment to write a book, and I needed a place to stay. And I got a tip on a landlady, and I met this woman, and she took me way, way down into this other part of town that I didn't know where I was, or I wasn't oriented or anything. She took me far away from the center of town into a barrio called San Antonio. And I saw a nice apartment in the evening, and I took it. And the next day I realized that I was the only gringo in town, and my Spanish wasn't so good. And I woke up that morning. It's like 5 a.m. I woke up and there was a rooster on my balcony. And I'm like looking at the rooster, and I look outside and there's a woman yelling at her rooster. And so she comes in my house and she gets her rooster, and there's feathers all over my bedroom. And I just thought, I'm not in Kansas anymore. This is just going to be, and I was 30 years old, and there it was. So, I'm
And
not very much afraid of things, Melissa. I'm not really afraid,
which is one of the reasons that you're as sort of inspiring as a traveler and a writer is the fearlessness. And I think that in many ways they probably both of those things have emboldened you as you've taken risks with them. But Nothing to Declare was your first travel book, right? And it wasn't just hailed as a great travel book. It was seen as a feminist kind of manifesto. And I'm curious whether you knew that in writing that book about being a woman alone, being out into the world in the way that you were, that it was going to have that kind of response in the world.
I think if I'd sat down to write a feminist manifesto, and I probably didn't know what that meant when I wrote it anyway, I think that I would have written not the book I wrote, and it wouldn't have told I sat down to tell a story. I always sit down to tell a story. But when I sat down to write Nothing to Declare, so just before, the summer before I wrote it, the New York Times had come out with a special summer travel issue, 27 books, all by men. And I was like, this is weird. Like, why aren't women writing about travel? Like there's, all these, I hadn't written a word about travel. Let me just add that. And I was having lunch with my editor, and I said, isn't it weird? Like, women aren't writing about travel. And she said, Mary, you travel all the time. You never write about it. And I really started thinking about what was the difference. Why didn't I write about it? And what was it about my vision as a woman? Anyway, what I realized was that I did not feel I could own my experiences as a woman, because I felt that, I didn't go to sea, I didn't go to war. My adventures were more kind of internal and interpersonal. And, the woman whose rooster it was became my best friend in Mexico. So for me, a lot of what it means to be a woman in the world are making those human connections.
Yeah.
And not denying the emotional piece of my journeys, not just writing about what's happening out there, but what is the interface between me and who I am and where I am and the people and the encounters. And I think if anything makes it feminist, it's that I put my emotions in the book. That's all.
Yeah. It's interesting. I just picked up Annemara Lindbergh's memoir, North to the Orient. I don't know if you've ever read that one, about her. And yes, she was flying with her husband over the Arctic to the Orient. But one of the reviews, and this was probably reviewed in the 1930s, gave the book great praise. But what it said was, it's not just that she reveals the destination, but she reveals something about herself. And that's what makes great travel writing. And to me, that's really what you're talking about is having the courage to have that book be as much about your internal landscapes as the external ones.
And that's always been, since I began writing about travel, that's always been my thing, is that interface, that connection between the inner landscape and the outer landscape. And, I read a lot of those really excellent travel books by some of the very acclaimed and male travel writers. And I miss that. I miss the personal.
Yeah.
There was a moment where I started to ask myself, well, why did this guy go and get away? Or, didn't he have 4 children that he left at home? Like, what was that? How did that, did he ever think about those 4 children? Which was one book I read. And I just really wondered about those children. I mean, so I don't know if women move through, I think women do move through the world differently, but I also think women, we feel, I don't like to make this gender-based, and I think things have changed so much, but when I started to write about travel, I wanted to put the feelings on the page.
Yeah.
I wasn't
and that
afraid
was,
of it, I
yeah.
wasn't afraid of it.
And in that form of travel writing, that was not what most people were doing.
No, not at all.
Yeah, which
No.
certainly sets it apart. Now, I'd love to talk to you, since we are both obsessed with travel, and the world of travel has not been disrupted in as cataclysmic a way, probably at least in the last century, as it was this year. And we went from, I always say that in 2019, our company sent people to 122 different countries. And then in March of 2020, Americans were only allowed into 11 other countries. And I think that was probably the smallest number in the 20th century, 21st century, certainly, that people could go to. So you and I went from living in a world where we could be very mobile and we could easily, with a passport and a plane ticket, go to more places in the world than ever before, to suddenly not being able to go anywhere. And I'm curious how that changed your perspective on things, and what sort of surprised you in undergoing that kind of change to your sense of freedom and possibility.
It's interesting. For me, travel was always about getting on an airplane and clocking miles. Like, I would obsessively check my mileage and go, how many free flights can I get? And one of the things that we've been in this cabin in the Catskills, and one of the things I've learned is you can travel. I'm traveling here all the time. I'm having incredibly bizarre, some super bizarre experiences. I'm meeting lots of different kinds of people up here. Marcel Proust, I've quoted this to you before, but Proust says that travel isn't about seeing new places, but it's about seeing with new eyes, fresh eyes. And I think, you can walk down through your neighborhood, you can go a different way, you can take a street you've never taken. I mean, you don't have to, grab your passport. I mean, of course, that is what we all want to do and crave, but it can also be, discovery can happen in a million different ways. I think travel is about discovery.
Yeah.
However you discovery and possibility. Yeah.
And so in terms of actual travel that you would like to do, or the way you would choose places, has that been impacted by this time where we've all been sitting at home and discovering differently? Are there ways that you think you will go out into the world differently?
Well, you and I were talking about this a little bit earlier, and I feel that I'm more interested in going somewhere and kind of plunking myself down and really being in a community, living with locals, spending more time in a place, rather than, getting on 10 airplanes a year and doing quick flights here and things like that. I'm more interested in like connection and steeping myself in a place, going to the markets. And it's one of the reasons my husband and I actually have done house swaps over the years, because it does allow you to do that. But I'm thinking more of like, a month at a time somewhere where I might have before gone for 5 days or,
Yeah.
2 days. So
No,
So-
and I think that's impacted a lot of people who are feeling exactly the same way. I mean, in some ways, I think that we use the word steeped, but we've all been steeping at home. And in some ways, we've been forced to live in a less frenetic way. And I think there are aspects of that that even I, as a constant nomad, have come to really treasure. And so I think a lot of us want to go back out into the world in a less frenetic way. And as you said, not move around as much, but go one place and unpack and just be there and understand what it's like to be in a place and really have it wash over you in a way that we've all done in the last year. So I think there's no question that people are going to be quieter, and I think more considered about why am I getting on that airplane, what's my intention of this, as opposed to just doing it because you could.
Yeah, is it just some list you're ticking off, or is there some, the places that I've written about are the places that have dug roots. They have dug their roots into me, and I have dug my roots into those places. And I think a lot of it is your purpose of travel. Again, is it just to tick off something on a list, or is it to really have a greater vision of the world, have a deeper understanding of others, learn more about local cultures and food and customs, and just have a larger vision? And I think if it's the latter, it doesn't matter if you see 10 cities on your trip where you could, I like to get a hub. Like I like to put myself somewhere and create a circle around that area and really explore.
And for people who aren't as comfortable out in the world, are there tips that you would offer, or ways that you would encourage people to think about the value of maybe changing their scene, and immersing themselves in some place different?
Well, I think something that people can think about is, if there's something you love to do and you have a deep interest in, maybe finding a place where you could pursue that. For example, I love language, and I'm very interested in particularly Romance linguistics. I have a degree in Romance linguistics. So I will go to remote places in mainly Italy or France or whatever, and just work on my language skills for a while. But maybe, if you have a deep interest in, like, I have a friend who's really interested in water lilies, and she's been going to this place in France where, you can study water lilies, and, whatever it is. My husband's working with a writer who's an incredible ceramicist who's done all of his studies in Japan. Like, why not take your hobby, go tango, do the tango in Argentina, go learn something somewhere. If you don't feel like you're, I think sometimes that's good to give you a little bit of structure,
Yeah. And so where are you dreaming of going to next, Mary?
Well, I'm really hoping that I want to do a friend's journey in October. Sorry, this is the Catskills. I don't know, there's flies all over the place. I want to do a friend's journey through Europe, and I want to see all the people I haven't been able to see in the last, 18 months or whatever, 14
So
months.
can you tell me the definition of a friend's journey? I love this. Is it sort of a marathon to visit people you haven't seen?
Exactly. So I want to go visit all the people I love who I haven't seen. I actually have a little map where I put pins where, all those people are. And, it might be like a week in, it might be a week in Paris. I have a lot of friends in Portugal. I don't know, wherever, so that wouldn't be an adventure as much as just giving people hugs. So that's my first idea. And then my husband's never been to Greece, and I've never been to southern Turkey. So I really would like to do that. And then I've always wanted to go to Vietnam. So hoping to do that. And actually seeing a friend tomorrow from high school, a childhood friend who has a safari company, and hoping to talk with her a little bit about, when she's going to gear up again. And I mean, Africa's a dream of mine. That's just been a dream, and but I don't know. There're just a lot of places I haven't been that I want to go to, and I was kind of saying, well, I'll wait, but like, what are we waiting for now? Like, if you really want to go to the South Pacific, go to the South Pacific. If you, go.
Yeah, no, that's another one of the trends that I've seen in terms of people's reaction to COVID and having the opportunities of travel taken away from us, or prohibited for such a long period of time. I feel like there's kind of two distinct groups that have emerged, and in some ways you just encapsulated both of them. One group is what I call sort of the returners, the people who want to return to the places where they have had amazing experiences or been with wonderful people, and they want to check back in with the places or the people that they love. And then there's this inclination for sort of being a trailblazer, or seeking that deferred dream, whether it's a safari or Vietnam or Greece or whatever, making sure, okay, since I didn't have the time before, I'm going to seize the day and get to that dream now, because I don't want it deferred again.
I love those two categories, Melissa. Can I say that? I love the idea of the returners and then the deferred dream. I mean, I think that to me encapsulates exactly what I'm feeling, that the first thing is to return to the places we've loved and see the people we love, and then the deferred dreams.
Well, and I think in some ways it's because when we're, locked up in one place and we're dreaming of discovery, in many ways, what you do is you return back to those moments that were wonderful, whether it's a small restaurant in Paris or a boat guy in Italy, and you want to check in with them, and you know what they have brought you in this time of absence, and you want to sort of rekindle that, or you realize, this is something I just have to get done. This wonderful dream, I've got to make it happen.
Right. I mean, I also think what's going to be interesting in terms of post-COVID is our expectations of what the world will be like. Will that restaurant be open? Will those, who will be there? Will, it's hard to know. I mean, there's a little off the beaten track restaurant in Paris that we love, and I keep looking to see if they've opened, and it keeps saying temporarily closed. And I think temporarily is getting a little long now. So, there's also that I think we have to be careful of our expectation, because thinking we can retrace our steps, often you can't, right?
No, I mean, and having been in Morocco recently, I mean, I saw exactly what you're saying. I mean, there were places in the souk that may not reopen, though one of the things that those sort of trailblazers or returners get to experience is, I did feel that being among the first people back, you are seen by those who really count on tourism as these kinds of first signs of hope that tourism is going to recover. And so instead of years of people sort of thinking, oh my God, it's one more tourist. I mean, I had people in Morocco saying to me, please don't speak French. I haven't gotten to practice my English for a year. This is so wonderful. So I think it is going to be a different place, but I think that there's going to be a kind of a homecoming of that global exchange that we all been cut off from. That's pretty exciting.
I see Julie's here, but I want to share one very quick anecdote along those lines, which was, it was a year after 9/11, and we went to a pretty remote part of Ireland in County Clare, and we were walking down the street, and a woman stopped and said, where are you from? And we said, we're from New York. And I actually get choked up when I think of this. And she said, you're back, you're back. And that just really warmed my heart, that was really important to her and to them, and to what it means to be back, for all of us to be back, But, it'll be different, but I think it'll be beautiful.
And I think you're right, Melissa, about the reception of tourists, because I think tourism, sometimes places is like you said, just have that like, not another tour. And it's like, I think the arms will be welcoming a little bit more, I think now. Yeah, I definitely agree. And Mary, when you say you're going on the French trip, now are these people that you met on your travels, or are these like people that you knew in the United States that have relocated, or a combination?
They're all people I've met in my travels, all
Interesting.
100%.
Love it.
There's a family in Southern Italy who basically has adopted us, and we've gone there every year for 6 years, and we haven't gone for the last 2, and I can't wait to go back. And there's a family in Paris, and there's people. It's only people we've met on our travels.
And I think that speaks to the other thing about being open to not just, and really immersing yourself, that you can meet people that you have that desire to go back to, that you look at as extended family.
Right. And also, we were talking about, learn a language. If you, pick a language and learn a language and go do a couple week immersion somewhere. That's a great way to travel.
Yep.
So, I think that's also however you want to get over there is wherever you go.
Wherever you go. Okay, so there's a question for Laura, and this is a question for both of you. So Melissa, I'm going to throw it to you first, and then Mary, you can answer. Where would these two go if they were planning a trip together? And you can each answer it separately. So
oh gosh, that's really fun. I have to say, I think I would probably want to take Mary to Morocco, because it's one of my favorite places, and I have many friends there, like Mary gets to return to in other places. But I think in so many ways it would be so wonderful to share that with you, and I know you would love so many aspects of the country that would be probably where I would suggest we go.
Well, having just virtually followed your Morocco journey, I would love to see Morocco through your eyes and through your the local connections that you've talked about, and also to show you a little bit of my Tangier, because I love Tangier. And, I've never been to Kenya. I've never been on a safari in Africa. So, I could put that on my list also, Melissa, so we can think about either of those. But Morocco, yes.
And certainly, as you know, Africa is hugely important to me as well. So, and when I say Africa, Morocco is obviously Africa, but places for safari and
South Africa
and Kenya. So either one of those would be wonderful.
Right.
I'm seeing a big extended trip. So you start at the tip, and then you spend 3 or 4 months together traveling. And Mary, you have children. You have older children, correct?
I have a daughter who's
okay. Is she always been? Does she have your love of adventure and travel as well?
When she was born, I turned to the labor room nurse and I said, "Oh my God, I used to be a travel. I'm a travel writer." And the nurse said, "Make her sleep in different places." So I would put her on the floor. I'd put her in drawers. I wouldn't close it, but I put her in drawers. I put her
close it.
No, and she'll go anywhere. She's incredibly flexible. She has a little baby now. Their family, they go everywhere. We're all going to Jamaica in December for 10 days. So yeah, she's a great traveler.
Yeah.
She's also a great person. I think one of the things I read years ago was what makes the most successful adults and the thing that they had in common was they all traveled with their families as children. And by successful, I don't mean just in the worldly, I mean successful as humans.
As just humans.
Holistically successful. They had all traveled.
Yeah. It's very interesting. Well, it does. I mean, it's like reading a book gives you that sense of empathy, as does travel. It's like there's, if you, it definitely takes you and it's like gets you out of your bubble and shows you what the greater world looks like. Laura saying the safari for both of you with a video diary, please.
Just going to give a plug to Laura Rossi, who's my publicist, who's extraordinary. And Laura, you come with and do the video, okay?
Yeah, there you go. She could be the videographer. And Elise is on here saying she'll be ordering her copy of the book. So I love that.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, it's, travel is just, and I think you all are just in a very small thing, like we're looking at going and doing live events soon. I think there's a clamoring for our audience that wants to come back to the store and get back to normal. And I think that that's with travel too. It's just like everybody just wants to get back. And I think there's going to be a renewed joy in it.
I think you're right, Julie. Well, Melissa, you've just been on a trip. I mean, did you feel that renewed joy?
Yeah, what I think, again, I mentioned earlier, a lot of what we were able to do pre-COVID, I think we had gotten kind of used to and maybe took a little bit for granted. And the experience of, getting on an airplane and arriving into a totally different culture and being with people who have experienced some of the same thing we've all experienced this last year, but bring so many different perspectives. It's not taken for granted anymore. And I think all of us realize what a sacred privilege it is to be out into the world and to really have that kind of global exchange. And so there's no question there's an element of almost giddy joy that am I really getting to do this? Oh my gosh, this is extraordinary. I mean, we talked about it in a way, it's like we're creatures of habit, but we've all been sort of seeing our own family or a very select group of people for a very long time. So then to go out into the world and be with totally different people from completely different cultures and countries. And it's a privilege I don't think we're going to take for granted again.
I agree with you. It's a privilege.
And one of the things that you mentioned earlier, it was listening in the background, how when it came down to, we were only allowed into like 11 other countries. And my husband and I are not big travelers, but when they did the restrictions, we did kind of go, what do you mean we can't just go wherever we want? It was really kind of a shocking sort of thing, even though we're not huge travelers. It was still sort of felt restrictive in a way that it was just like, kind of taught us a lesson too, of the freedoms that we take for granted a lot, just from the privilege of where we live. Yeah. It's pretty interesting. Mary, I got to ask just a personal question, because you talked about being in linguistics, and I am a part of me is Basque. Did you ever study the Basque language by any chance?
The Basque language is one of, I think, the 3 languages that have no
origin.
No origin. Hungarian and Finnish and Basque, I think. So no, I didn't, although I spent a lot of time in Basque country, a lot of time there. But when you're in Basque country, they don't want to speak Spanish.
No,
it's not their friend.
No, it's not.
They want to speak English, and they're fine with that. But Basque is just one of those languages that when you see it on the street sign, you're like, I don't.
What is that?
Yeah.
I have certain words that my grandfather wrote out for us that just like my mother speaks very little, but
are you Basque origin? Are you Basque origin?
Yeah, my mother is full-blooded Basque.
Oh, I think it's an incredible culture.
Yeah.
And I think actually one of the great food cultures in the world. Now
it's really becoming really kind of the last like maybe 5-10 years, it's really become quite the spot there for food culture.
We spent a lot of time there. That's on my list, my friends list. We have great friends there. So
excellent. Yeah. Well, this has been such another great conversation, Mary, with you. Melissa, for people who are watching, if they want to find out more about you, where should we direct them? What kind of website or social media should we direct them to?
Well, thank you for inviting me on. I love every opportunity I get to talk to Mary about travel and writing, and you are such an inspiration, Mary. I run Indagare, which is indagare.com, and it means to discover or seek out in Latin, good Romance language. And so Indagare has a huge website with archives on travel, updates weekly on inspirational places. It's a members only travel company and content purveyor. And my Instagram is Indagare CEO. Our regular Instagram is just Indagare Travel. And I have a book on safaris coming out in September called Safari Style, which is about the most exceptional lodges and camps in Africa. So you'll be seeing that on both of those Instagram sites, and hopefully at Warwick's you'll see.
I was just gonna say, and am I seeing another conversation maybe in September sometime?
We can reverse that.
Good. We can reverse this conversation maybe in a few months. And I'm thinking that there'll probably be some trips that'll happen between now and then, so you can tell us about some more trips.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
And Mary, for you, where should we direct people to find out more about you?
You can go to my website, www.marymorris.net. Yeah, pretty much that.
And they can find out your social and everything there.
Yeah, Twitter at Morris at Morris14. Mary
Yeah,
Morris.
I just put it in the chat, so I think people can find that there.
Go find me.
All
I'm
right,
around.
ladies, you're around. Well, this was another great conversation. Thank you both so much for spending time with us tonight. Like I said, if somebody's watching and needed to step away, it's recorded, so it will be on YouTube and back on Facebook again. So with that, I'm going to take us off of Facebook and thank everybody for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you, Melissa, very much for
Thanks,
doing.
Julie. Thanks, Mary.
Bye, guys. Thank you.